We expect that the both resource person will highlight the emerging issues of gender sensitivities and the role of social media. We also expect that your participation will make this national level webinar more meaningful and thought-provoking. With this word, I inaugurated this national level webinar. Thanks to all.
Thank you, sir. I now request Mrs. Dipali Rajkwa Fukan, Head of the Department of English, JDSG College, to present the welcome address.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am.
Respected Dr. Joyanta Gogoi sir, Principal of our college, as well as inaugurator of today's national webinar, respected Dr. Fadina Hussein and Dr. Samar Sinha sir from Sikkim University, two specially invited learned resource persons of our webinar, esteemed colleagues, participants, and my dear students. Good afternoon to you all. I consider it a privilege at the end of my career. I, on behalf of the department, as well as JDSG College fraternity, extend herewith a hearty welcome to you all. The recent pandemonium caused by COVID-19 has indeed brought us to a standstill position. Dismay and disillusionment have burdened our hearts, but we know we are all students of literature, and literature and society are like two sides of the same coin. As such, we should never let ourselves surrender to this gloomy scenario. In other words, somehow we must endeavor to find out a way, a new horizon amidst this encircling darkness. Hence, this webinar on a significant social topic, that is Me Too. Long back, this hashtag sparked a chapter in gender relations, and its seismic reverberations have been felt across the world. We have two learned resource persons, one associate professor from Guwahati University, Dr. Hussein, and Dr. Samar Sinha from Sikkim University. We hope these two learned persons will deliver marvelous, scintillating speeches on this topic. In other words, we want this webinar to be a grand success.
Thank you, ma'am. Without further ado, let's now move on to our technical session. But before we start, let me please request everyone again to mute your audios and keep your videos off. Let me tell you, you can leave your comments and queries regarding the presentations in the chat box, which we will take up in the interaction session after the presentations by the guest speakers. So now we can begin. First speaker is Dr. Fadina Hussein. So ma'am, over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
You are audible, but we want to see you too.
Yeah, my video is on.
Yeah. We can see you now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Dr. Jayanta Gugoi, Principal, JDSG College. Ms. Dipali Rajkwa Fukan, Convener and members of the organizing committee of this webinar. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and views on such an important and significant, relevant topic, #MeToo, the politics of gender and its representation in social media. And before I begin my talk, I'd like to give you an overview of my paper.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes.
Monsumi?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Monsumi. Can you
Yes,
hear
ma'am.
me?
Yes, ma'am.
Monsumi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you. I can hear you, ma'am. Yes. I can hear you.
I can't hear anyone.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, ma'am, you are audible.
Hello?
Am I?
Yeah.
Okay. Mona Lisa, can you hear me?
It is audible. It is audible. We are getting your voice, madam.
I just want to give a brief overview of my paper today. The first section I am giving you, I'll be talking about few details of how the hashtag movement has started, which of course is available online, but I'd like to refer to few things of the past to make an argument in my second section, where I present an analysis of the hashtag movement. And in my third section, I'll be talking about the Indian context and trying to read into the form and language of this movement. So I begin my paper to start with. You know that Me Too was pioneered by Tarana Burke, an activist and woman of color, whose original project was aimed at mass healing. Starting it in 2006, gave voice to the survivors of sexual abuse and harassment of women of color of low-income groups. She believed that survivors would heal by, for instance, talking to each other, by saying, "I hear you, I see you," or "I believe." Tarana Burke first heard a 13-year-old girl's attempt to tell her story of being abused by her stepfather, a story that Burke was familiar from her own experience. This made her think of others who might have faced similar situations. So #MeToo can be described as an unleashing of women's stories, a wave of women's voices rushing to speak painful truths, to bear witness, to demand justice. It was fundamentally built on two ideologies: one, empowerment of women of color through empathy. And that empathy was believed to be and an antidote to shame that victims felt. The other substantial point of the movement is radical community healing, and this later got expanded to other parts of the world and became very more inclusive in nature. Another concern was also to make the perpetrators accountable. This drive was initiated by women of color, which gained momentum and publicity only in 2017, with the case of Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, who was accused of sexual harassment by a number of female actors. These incidents occurred over several decades and over the course of this had remained silent due to the powerful ideologies that preach the superiority of men of glorious reputations, and also because of the anxiety these women felt in order to validate their accusations. Now the is allowed to come and share their lived experiences of sexual harassment and assault in Hollywood or in any other workplaces. Some even went to the court or decided to go to the court to make the perpetrators accountable for what they did. Burke, at this point, reiterated the relationship between patriarchy and capitalism as the reason for the abuse of men in power positions in Hollywood and other workplaces. And we must note that the Me Too drive initially was focused not on celebrities, but on abuses, on assaults, on harassment of women in their everyday lives, in their workplaces, and in their personal lives. The question here is, why did it take so long, more than a decade, for it to gain momentum, or the world to respond to sexual harassment of a particular gender? It becomes pretty obvious that an initiative by a woman of color was ignored by the white feminists when it was started in the year 2006. Not only that, it needed a man in power position as the perpetrator for the media to zero in to the problem of violence against women. In addition, it was Alyssa Milano who drew in the attention of the world, because both the perpetrator and the accuser here were white and were celebrities. Weinstein, we must note this, that Weinstein, when accused by Lupita Nyong'o, a woman of color, immediately refuted her claims of sexual harassment, whereas the 50+ allegations by other women didn't trigger any immediate response. He publicly discredited and declared her account as untrue. Evidently enough, in cases of accusations, perpetrators, or responses, race becomes one of the major determinants. What I'm trying to get at is the politics of the whole hashtag narrative as to who speaks and about whom. This determines media attention, representation, and circulation. Now, furthermore, we see that this movement reveals that it is a drive to speak up, to speak out, and challenge the system that enables such violence against women. Not everybody is willing to talk, and so needs a platform or a page to say things which are otherwise terrifying. And it also shows how Twitter was filled with race, pain, and solidarity. And this kind of harassment is all pervasive, and people were speaking from different locations. Women were sharing their experiences from different locations, from different countries, and their stories show different ways of harassment, and not simply concentrated in Hollywood or certain workplaces. It also showed who can be harassed, men or women, reiterating the gender question and inequality. It showed an intentional use of a certain type of language to debunk accepted discourses and myths. The movement, established strongly one's right to heal. Harassment and rape are the two ends of the same spectrum. That is violence against women, as Tarana Burke would like to believe. Earlier it was patriarchy and social conventions which were blamed. Now with Me Too, we see how patriarchy goes hand in hand with capitalism. The use of social media platforms has created a global community, and this has made even isolated incidents at remote places significant. When Alyssa Milano urged survivors of sexual harassment to speak out their experiences with this hashtag, you see, this hashtag was shared more than 12 million times in the first 24 hours, according to EPW, that is Economics and Political Weekly. In October of 2017, this became not just a hashtag, but a movement fueled by hashtag activism on social media, particularly in Twitter. Coincidentally, Twitter was also launched, just like the Me Too tribe by Burke, launched in 2006 by its originator, but I'm not going into the details of the launch and the purposes of Twitter. So one sees after this started, after the Milano's call, we see that one after the other, the feeds and the timeline show each individual participant contributing to a larger narrative and meaning-making process on social media, either by using features like retweet, reply, or @reply. These user modes translate into semiotic modes, which is recognized as a system of meaning-making through speech, writing, gesture, image, moving image that contribute to the formation of a discourse. It is also true that, as seen in a research data, 15% of the tweets addressed celebrities or the entertainment industries. 14% of them mentioned personal stories, and 7% referenced politics or specific politicians. Now, this research was done in 2018. The story taken collectively have narrative agency and form, as defined by K.K. Campbell in 2005 in his Agency, Promiscuous and Protein. His rhetorical agency refers to the capacity to act That is, to have the competence to speak or write in a way that will recognize or will be heeded by others. The Me Too movement can be analyzed using this criteria as narrative agency, just like Jay Young's analysis of hashtag Black Lives Matter movement. Now, Young identified the narrative form of the overall movement. According to Young, I quote, hashtag activism happens when a large number of postings appear on social media under a common hashtag word, phrase, or sentence with a social or political claim. That is Young 2016. He wrote this in 2016, and this new narrative phenomenon is enabled by the technological affordances of Twitter. There's the interplay of narratives, the stories, and the design of social media algorithms, allowing individual stories to manifest as narratable social movement in networked public sphere. There can be multi-directional interaction between writers and the readers. In blogs and social networks like Twitter or Facebook, users are empowered to write back and contribute their point of views. The act of writing itself now has become a collaborative and social activity that increasingly involves practices of commenting and participating. So now this participation is very significant, that everyone can now come and participate by retweeting, by what we know in Facebook as resharing, and also use the mode called @reply and have a proper discussion and speech by the users. So in that, this collective participation in the political makes it significant. Now this participation makes it more exploding. I mean, it did, the movement, the hashtag movement, Me Too, did explode at one point of time. And now, on one hand, we are looking at it as a world movement, and I'm trying to explain the features of this movement. And on the other, I would like to locate the movement. We know that when the second and third wave of popular feminism emphasized individual empowerment and consumption, this movement focused at collective support, solidarity, healing, and restorative justice. It has the potential of feminist politics rooted in shared experiences in the form of activism for social change on a social media platform. The fourth wave of feminism seems to have begun, though it has been argued and there has been counter arguments. We do accept that the fourth wave of feminism began in December 2012 with the focus on body shaming, rape, and sexual harassment. A key component was the use of social media to highlight and address these concerns. It started with few high-profile incidents, and also started with the Nirbhaya case in India, which sparked local protests and international outrage. This was followed by the Gamergate campaign that sought to promote ethics in video game journalism. But This was actually a harassment campaign, mostly by women, against the female stereotyping in video games. Then comes Trump's defeat of Hillary Clinton in 2016. And the next day saw the call of a grandmother on Facebook proposing a march protesting Trump's inflammatory remarks about women. This women's march took place in 21st January 2017, and as many as 4.6 million people attended, making it the largest single-day demonstration in that country's history. This campaign gained widespread attention after Winston's case came up, and women of all ethnicities began sharing their experiences on social media using the hashtag. It has all the features of a global social movement. Now, according to the critics, James and Ben Sitters in 2014, the features of a global social movement are the formation of a collective community and collective identity with women all over the world sharing their experiences of facing sexual harassment, the drive to change the status quo of ignorance towards these occurrences, and the lack of action, coming together of a large group for social change. So it was October 2017 in the US, and it is October 2018 in India. Both mark the beginning of the hashtag movement against the pervasiveness of sexual harassment, which is thought to be the end of the years of silence. Some spoke for hope of justice, some in the hope of being heard, and some in solidarity. According to the Economic Times News, 2019 saw the biggest rise in complaints in the National Commission for Women, 570 in 2017 to 965 in 2018. Several women spoke out against men in power who had allegedly abused them, and most of them were reported from the world of cinema. There is a shift in how the industry views harassment, saying the filmmaker and actor Revati, a founding member of Women in Cinema Collective, WCC, set up earlier in Kerala. I quote, "The industry used to be very complacent about it, with most people feeling that these things happen. Now that attitude has changed, and that's big." Now, I'll mention some of the cases in India, particularly for their various responses. But before that, may I ask Mona Lisa if I can share my screen?
Yeah, sure. You can share, yeah, sure. Yes.
So this is from the Economic Times, 10 October 2019, where you have this chart of the rising cases And the next, just now I have read the sudden spike, nearly 80% jump in the complaints of sexual harassment at workplaces reported before the National Commission for Women. So in 2016, we have 539 and 2018, we have 965. And this is from the Ministry of Women and Child Development, was presented in the Lok Sabha in February 2019. And for a detailed list of allegations and status, you can also refer to this news from First Post, Me Too in India, a list of allegations as reported on social media, and followed by First Post. Now, I would like to go back to, I really don't know how to do it here. Yeah, so I'll be looking at few cases here. In case of the accused M.J. Akbar, the journalist and the union minister, he was accused of sexual harassment, engaging in predatory behavior, abusing position of power by multiple women. And the status was he had to step down as the minister, but at the same time, he filed defamation cases, denied all allegations. 17 women journalists asked court to hear their testimony about the culture of casual misogyny, entitlement, and sexual predation that he endangered and presided over. So that was the status according to the Asian Age newspaper. The next is Kanan Gill, the comedian. And his status is Kanan Gill, of course, issued an apology, says she accepts, the woman said that she accepts the apology, doesn't intend to pursue the matter further. And the next is, of course, the writer Chetan Bhagat, who was accused of sending inappropriate messages by multiple women. But of course, in this case, Bhagat apologizes for his flirtatious exchange, unquote, and denies other allegations. In the case of Binod Dua, the journalist, who was accused of sexual harassment by his colleague Nishtha Jain, Dua refers to allegations as mudslinging. The wire, which he is currently associated with, says their IC will look into the accusations. External committee later ends probe saying it doesn't have the unconditional consent on both sides. Next, there is this editor, P. Surendran, editor and poet, was accused by multiple women. And in this case, Surendran issues statement claiming this is a lynch mob of the drawing room at work. I am being shamed. In the Scarlet Letter meets the crucible social media produced movie. Later stepped down from the Literary Festival Board of Directors and was also dropped as the chair Poetry Evenings program for 2019. So we see several responses to the accusations made by several women in these cases, and we see how it affects India and how the acts, you see, become more active. The Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013 was also known as the Posh Law, which mandates offices with more than 10 employees to have an internal complaints committee. ICC became more effective and active. Delhi-based lawyer Sonal Mato, who is on the ICC of several organizations, including BCCL, which publishes ET magazine, says there was a focus on doing sessions with small groups of women, getting their feedbacks on these issues. And on the other hand, we also see several defamation cases, like in case of MJ Akbar, were lodged and counterclaims made by the perpetrators. The fallout also included a reluctance to hire women and mentor them. Excuse me. If it is race in the US or Brazil, it is caste that determines violence and justice in India. A look at the tweets of hashtag Adivasi Lives Matter would reveal the sexual harassment by police personnel against the Adivasi women who were later punished or threatened for raising their voices. In case of a gang rape survivor, the family members of the accused kept trying to convince her to marry him, although she was in trauma. The survivor got agitated in court and was finally arrested. We know of the minor girl being raped by a priest in Kerala, who later appealed to court, stating his wish to marry the survivor and take care of the child born to her. It is as if marriage would sanction the rape and the behavior that has gone before. Several such cases and survivor stories have been posted in Me Too India page that are stories of torture and rape. I'm not going into each and every story there because I think anyone can read it online in Twitter. Considering the responses to the allegations and the context of different cases, we can only conclude that Me Too in India is multi-phased, one replete with tension, contradictions, polarizations, and caste politics. To understand the trajectory and future of this hashtag activism, a study by a group at the University of Boston, published in the Harvard Business Review, reported that 56% of the women they surveyed felt that men would continue to harass but take more precautions against being caught. More than 10% of men and women said they thought they would be less willing than earlier to hire attractive women. Close to 60% of men felt that men would have greater fears of being unfairly accused. On this fear of being unfairly accused, let us look at certain representations from leading newspapers that carried news of hashtag MeToo in the UK and US. Media, we know, is central in this activism. For those who have not experienced sexual harassment, media functions as the key source of information and awareness. Scholars like Sutil and Welby in Sex Crime in News, so a section of the newspaper, Sex Crime in the News, suggests that media coverage of sexual violence is often inaccurate and sensationalist. and sexualizes victims of this highlights the damage done by media. So I'll again go back to share my screen here because I don't want to read out the quotes here. The first one, long time speculations over which of those Harvey girls have succumbed to his sexual overtures has inevitably been given new life by the latest revelations. This was in Daily Mail. Now this implies consent and sexualizes and sensationalizes decades of abuse committed by a man in a position of power. The women are therefore positioned as complicit in the abuse and responsible for their victimization. So the next is also from the Daily Mail. Now in this we see that blaming survivors of sexual harassment is well documented already by many feminist critics. This includes usually blame in relation to behavior such as alcohol consumption, clothing choices, previous interactions with the rapist as noted by Burt in quote, the title of the article is Cultural Needs and Supports for Rape. Many victim survivors experience victim blaming. Now in the second quote from Daily Mail that was published in 7th October 2017, there is an implication for being a Winston favorite, simultaneously sexualizing her. Both the Daily and in the third we see I have quoted only the Daily Mail, but it was also in the Guardian. Both the paper reported on Winston's appearance in court discussed his appearance in a way that invoked sympathy. Now you can see here that the disgraced mogul arrived with his lawyers and bodyguards so and so limping as he walked into the court. Winston, who did not shave and looked ashamed, outfitted himself in a suit jacket and tie for his appearance. So here we see that taking a sympathetic angle when representing perpetrators of violence in the media is not new. In fact, perpetrators are often presented as victims. Now, it has the effect of distracting the public from the reality that women are far more likely to experience sexual violence perpetrated by someone known to them, and yet again places the responsibility back onto women to avoid these monsters. So the responsibility to avoid them again comes back to the woman. One instance of media reporting by sensationalizing issues in India is the headline, "Dark underbelly," I quote, "dark underbelly of Indian media revealed as scores of journalists say #MeToo." So there is this article, the first year of reporting #MeToo in English language press focused on celebrity stories, published in published on 8 January 2020, light on how a hashtag movement originating in one country can have different resonances in another. One newspaper suggests why hashtag men too should join hands with hashtag #MeTooIndia. The newspapers following the cases in Hollywood were focused on prominent people from cinema, cricket, and were celebrities. In some certain type of stories were selected over other topics depending on local issues and relevance. I quote, some raised questions of sexual violence in Indian middle class, but also trivialized it by focusing on celebrity scandals and ignorant harassment and abuses felt by marginalized women. Hashtag #MeTooIndia drew attention of corporates and Indian governments. Now, this article that I'm talking about is written by Suman Mishra, who did a research on several newspapers, and their reporting. The newspapers were the Hindustan Times, the Times of India, the Indian Express, the Telegraph, and the Economic Times. The Suman Mishra is from the Southern Illinois University, and he examined how the phenomenon of news domesticated in the newspapers in India. It also filtered the stories through a local media logic, which included market or commercial or cultural logic. The Indian Me Too movement has been an urban phenomenon. And as Raya Sarkar noted, she is a student of law, noted in an interview to the Indian Express, Dalit, Bahujan, and Adivasi DBA women have the least access to justice and often face intense hostility from the Savarna community when they attempt to take due process measures or expose predators. The movement does not represent these women. I hope as a community we can build more resources and support for the most vulnerable and marginalized. Any campaign should not treat the most vulnerable as just an afterthought. Raya Sarkar is the student who published a crowdsourced list naming alleged sexual harassers from the academic circle, and we know the list. Some of us may have seen the list as well, and who has been heralded as the founder of the hashtag #MeToo movement in India. So we can say that hashtag #MeToo is in essence has been women's speech, her storytelling. And it is because of the history of restricting women's speech which makes it political. Similar to all political movements, it has its share of backlash. And a backlash against Me Too is a backlash against speech. Women's speech perceived to undermine men's interest has been feared and suppressed for centuries. I quote, from the scold's bridle to actual witch hunts to the violent suppression of women's suffrage, history is replete with attempts to keep women quiet and in their place. Men's silencing of women, particularly spurred by women's sexual decisions or actions, is also a prominent theme in mythology and folk tales of multiple cultures. As myths represent some of our deepest and oldest fears and desires, these stories serve as rich sources of illumination, illustration, and illumination in understanding the relationship between men's sexual race and the suppression of women's speech. Now, this is a quote from the essay titled 1001 Stories, Meet and Me Too Movement by Mary and Franks. Now, the title itself, 1001 Stories, resonates the 1001 Arabian Nights, which had the female protagonist, Shahrazad, who used her speech and to save the women of her country. Now, I'll give you a little details of that. Now, Mary explains the stories of three mythical women in the essay, Cassandra, Philomela, and Shahrazad. In 1001 Arabian Night, the king, Shahrazad, discovers that his wife is unfaithful to him, and so he kills her in rage. And that was not enough. To satisfy his fury, he planned that he in fact decided that he'd marry virgin young woman every day, and after their wedding night, execute her, leaving her with no scope of being unfaithful. As the population of young women in the kingdom dwindles, Shahrazad, the daughter of the vizier, volunteers to marry the king. On their wedding night, Shahrazad asks the king if she could be allowed to say farewell to her sister, who has been instructed to request that Shahrazad tell her one last story. Shahrazad begins a suspenseful, action-packed story, stops at a cliffhanger as morning dawns, and she breaks off the story. She stops. The king asks her to finish the story. Shahrazad says she cannot, as the time has come for her execution. But the king is desperate to hear the end of the story, so he grants her one more night to finish it. The next night, Shahrazad finishes the story but begins an even more exciting story. And this is how she saved the women of her country by, quote unquote, telling stories. These myths offer, I'm not going into the other two myths, these myths, you see, offer insights into the interaction of male sexual race and women's speech that shed light on the #MeToo movement and the backlash it has inspired. All these measures are reflected in the modern reality of male abuse of women. Portrayed as promiscuous, crazy, or simply unreliable. Many victims endure the threat of physical assault or death as a means to keep them quiet. Women's speech has the power to testify, to warn, and perhaps most importantly, to change the world as we know it. To speak then is political, because as Adrian Rich expresses in Diving into the Red, the words are purposes, the words are maps. So I have printed my paper. I will just quickly show you the further readings. If you are interested, you can just go through some of these. It is available online. There is this book, Me Too and the Politics of Social Change, edited by these authors and published by Macmillan, which has most of the discussions that I have just referred to, and also Tarana Burke's statements in this, where she says that it all started for Black and brown women and girls, they have still been ignored. So you can just have a look at these sites, and thank you. That is all. Mona Lisa, I have come to the end of the
Yes.
time,
Thank you.
or is it early? Am I on time?
Yeah, you are right on time. Thank you, Dr. Hussein, for the very interesting take on the subject, and we can already see a few questions coming up. We are surely going to take those up later during the interaction. I think that is okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we shall now proceed on to our next speaker, Dr. Samar Sinha. Dr. Sinha, are you there? Hello, Dr. Sinha?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, I can hear you, but I can't see you. Can you please
Can you see me now?
switch on your video? Yes, I can see you now. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all yours now, Dr. Sinha. Please, we request you to please make your presentation. Thank you.
So I would like to first share my screen. So if it is possible, can you see my screen? Okay, somebody, Mona Lisa, somebody is sharing the screen. Can you ask somebody not to share the screen? A man is, your screen is still being shared.
Okay. I'm. So is it okay now? I think
Yeah,
I have
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's okay.
I request all the participants again to please mute their audios. Hello, Dr. Sinha, are you there? Hello?
Mona Lisa?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, can you see my screen now?
Yeah. Now I can see you. Yes, I can see your screen too.
Is it the, what is written in the national webinar? Is it the first slide?
Yes,
Is that?
yes.
Okay. So I think I can now start with my presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Chairperson. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, particularly Dr. Jayanta Gogoi sir, Dr. Dipali Furkan ma'am, Dr. Mansuri Sharma for extending warm invitation to this webinar. Last but of the list, I'm indebted to Dr. Mona Lisa Boragwai for providing this opportunity to me too to say few words in this national webinar. Hashtag #MeToo, the politics of gender and its representation in social media, and also to Dr. Fardina Hussein for her deep insights into the phenomenon, which makes my job much easier. Let me begin this talk with some personal note. Although I am speaking on social media, here I would like to inform that I have gracefully retired from social media platforms after many years. However, due to the occupational pressures, I'm on WhatsApp, but I do have accounts in Facebook and Twitter, and Instagram was not there when I was using it. And these are the accounts which I had opened many years ago, but now they are still present but inactive. If you try to guess why I left these social media platforms, probably the answer is very simple. I left because of the friend request from students, or they being my followers on Facebook rather than on the textbook. So one day that I would like to be their friend on textbook rather than a Facebook friend. So this is how I try to make a meaning out of my purpose of quitting the social media platform, though I'm speaking on it today. As a human being, we all are meaning makers. In our desire to make meaning, we create and interpret signs, as I did in quitting the Facebook as well as Twitter. As Charles Peirce, semiotician, said, we only think in signs. There is nothing independent of sign. We all are signs and we think in signs, and all our communication and all our exchanges takes place in sign. This is one of the most convincing points to rally why we are on different social media platforms. I'm sure that all of us are in one or the other. Reflecting our meaning-making efforts, we would like to share what we think, what we feel about, and what we would like to know also. Since we operate through language in the social media, here comes conceptual apparatus within which we try to understand and analyze the hashtag. Language is a system of signs in a community. This is a very well-known fact established long time ago. Hence, founding father of semiology or semiotics, Saussure, famously said that language is a social fact, is a social reality. In the course of time, Jacobson identified 6 functions of language following structural functional approach. And one of the unmentioned functions, let us call it 7th function of language, is to rejuvenate, is to bring back to life. Hashtag #MeToo is a very good example of this undefined, unwritten 7th function of language. I'm sure that others are with me. Is it true? Are you with me? Others? Mona Lisa, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yes.
So can you see my screen also?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So, and I would like to continue. Posts and reposts are signs composed of it. So when we look into the tweets or retweets, or Pam was calling it replies, mentions, all these are composed of signs, and each sign is a bipartite unit composed of signifier. That is the physical aspect of what we hear or what we write, or as image or gestures. And the signifier, that's the conceptual relation between them, which we call it as signification. Each sign is unique and collectively forms language. These signs are dynamic, communicative, and contextual. A sign has many senses, though its reference may be the one. Beyond its referential denotative meaning, as Hemsley suggested, that sign also has connotative meaning. So based on this aspect of semiosis, Roland Barthes conceives that connotative meaning is ideologically governed and by media. Here the relevance of the hashtag #MeToo and the semiotics of Roland Barthes comes together. He analyzes mundane phenomena Rolabad, and shows how myth, not to be understood in a very general parlance, but I'll come to it later on also, which is a higher order of signification is created. Since a sign has multiple interpretations, like myth can be understood variously, it can be a very traditional folk tale kind of a myth. A myth can be considered something as false or something of gigantic nature, but here the myth has been used in a very different way, the way Rolabad tried to portray it. In this talk, what I'm going to talk about is Me Too movement and the three messages. This talk is not of a chronological order, disciplinary, or even a narrative kind, though it includes the both. It is rather an exploration, as I conceive of it, the hashtag Me Too in the social media in our times, as a sign of our times. In other words, it is about the hashtag Me Too and its significance in the contemporary world, primarily its semiotics. Yet, I do not offer another newer conceptualization about hashtag Me Too, but to examine the phenomenon and its significance and relevance within the continental semiotic tradition. Now, if I go into the outline of my presentation, I have got 7 to follow. And since the ma'am in the very beginning, Dipali ma'am, made a reference that we all, almost all of us are here with having a literature background. So I'm very sure that we all of us have always gone through either of these or both of these books. So if you look into my introduction, I would like to refer back to one of the well-known novels of our times. Way back in 1954, Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. There might be hardly anyone in this audience who has not read or who has not heard about Lolita or who hasn't thought a bit about Lolita. And this is the new book by Kate Elizabeth Russell. It was released a month back in 2020. It's Modern Days Lolita, My Dark Vanisha. And both these books are available and you can read it online also. So I would like to think, since we all have some literature in our background, academics, I would like to think, to be an imaginative, what would Lolita would have been tweeting today with a hashtag, or what did Vanisha tweet regarding hashtag Me Too? So these are primarily the questions that we would have been raising for a very long period of time. And also, ma'am, in the earlier lecture, mentioned about how the Indian women are doing so. So if I go back to Lolita, Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, the narrator is a very unreliable narrator. The Humbert, the protagonist, who is being, in today's sense, we can put him as an accused. Of course, Nabokov also portrayed him as a wretched person or something similar to that. And using the literary techniques of double meaning, puns, and coinage, Nabokov has tried to bring a new kind of a style into the narration. And interestingly, we never understood what Lolita really felt about it because we never got a chance to understand the story from her side, or her story, or her perspective. Therefore, I need to believe it, or if we need to imagine further, Lolita never tweeted. So there was nothing that we knew about Lolita. But if you look into Vanisha, so Vanisha is also similar to Lolita. Oh, interesting fact is there. Humbert and Jacob Strain, both of them, they are English teachers. I don't know what is the relation between the teacher of English language and with these two characters, Lolita and Vanisha. So there is a kind of a intertextuality between them. Yes. Yeah. Is there anything? So if you look into Vanisha's tweet, of course, there's nothing called tweet, but there is a passage where she says that I could participate in this movement of women, upon women, lining the walls with every bad thing that's ever happened to them, but I'm not going to lie to fit in. In other words, Vanisha doesn't consider herself a victim and refused to join the campaign to get Jacob Strain, who is her teacher, who is 42 years old, and she's around 15 years old. So other students have complained about him, about his misconduct, and he eventually gets fired, but Vanisha doesn't complain because she says that she doesn't consider herself to be a victim. So if you look into this hashtag #MeToo, it is very interesting. It is an online phenomenon where we find posting and reposting, replies and mentions, shares and likes. Since it is also about the shared experiences of sexual harassment, assault, and violence against women. Yes, is there anything that?
No. You can please carry on.
And there is also a sense of magnitude of the sexual assault and workplace harassment. In fact, Ferdinand ma'am also mentioned about it earlier in her talk, that it gives a magnitude, a sense of magnitude, how big, how frequent, how large, how everywhere, how in a sense it's a pandemic about sexual assault and workplace harassment. If you look, one of the can somebody switch off its echo?
Yeah, I think someone has unmuted the audio, and that's why it is echoing. Yeah, please, I request everyone to please switch off your audios.
If you look into one of the journalistic writings by Louis Berg in 2018, what he basically finds is that the greatest measurable impact of the #MeToo, of the hashtag #MeToo, in its arrival in countries where ideology or religious doctrine have traditionally hampered open conversations about sexual assault. So this is one of the important, significant part of the hashtag #MeToo, is that even in those countries where sexual assault was very rampant, but because of religion and tradition or because of some other ideologies, it was not been discussed as an open conversation. It is very interesting to know that Time magazine offered the Person of the Year award to all these women who have contributed towards the #MeToo, hashtag #MeToo. So hashtag #MeToo is also about a personal perspective, outpouring of your personal stories. So it begins from as a tragedy, from accusation to solidarity and calls to action. So you can find a range of stories which have been shared, which is also which begins from fact to fiction to tragedy to the accusation, as well as finding a solidarity between women and call for actions for justice, for healing, and for other purposes. Also, there is the claim for legal rights, to seek protection of the law, and to demand better laws. So these are the significant characteristics of this hashtag #MeToo. At the same time, though it is an online community within one single agenda of sexual assault, it became one single issue community in a sense of Anderson Benedict's imagined community. And significantly, it also represented voices which were underrepresented for a very long period of time to bring about institutional and cultural change. In other words, if you look at it from the activism point of sense, it supported the feminism which was not there much in the online or in the hashtag culture. If you look at social media as a platform, but also it was conventional media was also part of it after the social media became a phenomenon. So it was a followed up. So social media is definitely an immensible, valuable communication tool, which enables everyday people to share and communicate, to celebrate and to challenge. And we hardly find any of the young teenagers or adults, or even now those people in their 60s who are not of these communication tools. So there are several networks like MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, WeChat, and few of these are popular in some countries, few of them are popular in some countries, with some generations, with some people. So it depends upon largely the demographic profile. And if you look into the whole hashtag Me Too, we also find women, we find men also, like Terry Crews, one of the American footballer, actor. He's also has been very vocal in this hashtag Me Too as a male victim. There are also trans people, people who non-binary divisions are also there. If you look into this reference, William Singh and Maisie, you'll find it that all sorts of people, the human beings, did participate in it. So it shows that how impactful the whole hashtag Me Too was. And look, interestingly, it was tweeted, or it was in circulation in over 85 countries, 1.7 million times in just first 10 days. So Park's analysis comes from there. And if you look into the Georgetown University's data, so there were more than 13 million tweets regarding the phenomenon. And if you go back yesterday only, when I was preparing this slide, I was also listening to the news that do not execute, hashtag do not execute was in circulation. And when the three of the Iranians were supposed to be executed yesterday, but because of the mass reposting and posting on it for millions, the whole decision of the court was halted for some period of time. I don't know what will happen, but it's the latest what happened yesterday. And if you look into the social media, what is also very important for us to know is to acknowledge the fact that social media is also a modern archive. If you look into this social media as an archive, you'll find that 80% of the hashtag MeToo tweets were in English, remaining 14% were in the languages like Spanish, German, French, Japanese, Swedish, Dutch, Italian, Portuguese, Korean, and Finnish, and rest of the 4% were in the languages that we speak. I hardly know how many tweets were there in Assamese or in Hindi or in Nepali or any of the northeastern languages regarding. This is the Elfilofo's analysis, which I'll come back to her analysis later on also. Now let's look into this subsection. So I have written it 3 Me Too. First is Me Too with a full stop, and there is within quote Me Too where there is a space, and there is a hashtag Me Too with M and 2 in capital, and they are written together. Of course, that might be a convention in the Twitter or in the hashtag culture. So I take these 3 as 3 different signs rather than as one. So for me, the Me Too full stop dot is different from Me Too, and it is different, and both of them are different from hashtag Me Too. So let me go to this first one, Me Too full stop. This is actually coined by Tarana Burke in 2006, whose picture I have posted next to her in the slide. And this is basically happened with reference to the quote that she said, so when she was talking to one of the victims, I know exactly how you feel, that happened to me. So that Me Too and the full stops come from that particular quote. It's basically about the empathy. So Me Too full stop is different from hashtag Me Too. I'll elaborate on this point because these are 2 different signs for me. And since they are signifiers, so they do have different signifieds, and the signification is different. So if you look into the history of Me Too, so Me Too began, Me Too full stop dot began as a movement, and that's what Tarana also refers to it. And the vision is to help survivors of sexual violence, particularly Black women and girls, and other young women of color from low wealth communities to find pathways to healing. So look at the factors that has been decided. Survivors of sexual violence, particularly Black women and girls, and it should be young, and they are young women from color, and they belong to low wealth communities. And it's also for healing, how to make them back, bring back them to the society. And what is very important in this Me Too full stop is that self-identification as a way to build bridges among survivors of sexual violence. Most often, this is what Garcia has noted, that most often the self-identification is always been lost. and therefore there is not able to build the bridges across them. And in one of the interviews recently given by Tarana, she mentions that that it is the community where the healing takes place in the best possible way. Therefore, it is essential to come together to identify and to bring bridges, to build bridges, so that we can form a community and healing can take place in a better way. So these were the concepts behind Me Too. Tarana Burke in 2006. Of course, it was not free from other points. If you look into the last point, it exposed tensions surrounding mainstream white feminism and its lacks of intersectionality. So this is what Murray has also. So if they were only confined to black and colored and young girls of Lowell, so these were the kind of the compartments it was been the Me Too is. Now, if you look into another Me Too, now I have given a tweet. Harassed or assaulted, right within quote Me Too as a reply to this tweet. This was what was started after 11 years by Elisa Milano. She's a well-known actress in the United States, and ma'am already told in the beginning that her case is related with Harvey Weinstein's case. So it was in Twitter where she popularized this hashtag to capture experiences of sexual misconduct in workspace. So it is not about brown and black, it is about the experiences. It's not about the healing, it's about in the workplace. Initially as a reply, then one of her friends suggested as a status, then it became as a status, as we know that a status in this social media. And the idea was not, if you look at it in the below, idea was not to say that we were, it's only to highlight the sense of magnitude. So the objectives of the Me Too was different, would basically to build a community for healing. And the objective of this Me Too was to create a sense of magnitude of the problem. So these two are different signifiers with different significations. If you look into this third one, which started with Elisa Milano's, so it became a hashtag Me Too, as following the convention of the, it was a digital movement. People often refer to as slacktivism as opposed to activism. And people also criticized it as a media spectacle, not as a solution to the problem. And of course, then what happened with the passage of time was there was a crowdsourced list called LOSA also, a list of sexual harassers in academia, list of sexual harassers in Hollywood movies or Bollywood movies. So everywhere, wherever they were human, wherever there was a male, wherever there was it was there. So it basically went from A to Z. There was no field in our human relationships, in our human institutions, where it was not there. So the case of sexual harassment, sexual assault was found in everywhere, and in everywhere the lists were published. If you go back to India, to another hashtag, Me Too India, there was a list of the well-known personalities being accused. And of course, there was a counter to this, as Fadhina ma'am told in the earlier. Also, and if you look into it, there were many journalists, specialists, Seema Mustafa and others, who have criticized that, and there were feminists, including my supervisor, Professor Aisha Kidwai and all, who have condemned that listing is not important section or important part of it. Providing justice, giving these were the important things. That's what was thought about. At the same time, was that since this was a digital platform and many years ago, it was not as like in this COVID time. So it was basically an elite. It was basically a metropolitan, because the access of internet was not, even today, it is not in the rural areas. And we, particularly in the Northeast, are totally taken off the pleasures of being in the web on most of the time. And at the same time, what was also noticed was there was a mob mentality. Before somebody is been given a chance to prove innocence or to present his or her argument, been decided that they are the accused. So these three things were very significant, and these are the noted also in the Me Too. At the same time, Me Too also gave hashtag Me Too also gave to a movement, basically Me Too voter. So where the leaders who are supposed to have a moral standards to ensure that they speak across all demographics, and that's about the survivors. If you look into this tweet, so this is one of the this typic kind of tweet which says that by sending or putting a list or swing all those things, it is not a solution. So it's basically critiques the whole movement as a media spectacle, as ego releasing, or sort of other things that I'll come to it later on also. So this is one of the tweets. So if you look into this three Me Too full stop of Tarana Burke, Me Too of Elisa Milano, and the continuation of hashtag Me Too as a global online phenomena, these are all systemic gender imbalance, which nobody can deny it. So if you look into the works, academic works, these are some of the findings that. So what they have made it basically is that it makes a sexual violence a big news. So it was still considered as a news for some point of time. If you look into the media, how it has been reacted, it has been considered as a movement of sound, of voices, and of volume, which might be taken as positively as well as negatively, rather than the big news will definitely a negative one. And Wexler's and others, the Bus Me Too is a social movement with explicit goals. So here I'm not putting it, it's within the quotation and without the full stop, because that's where I have taken as a quote from Wexler. It's a social movement with explicit goals, whereas the hashtag campaign is not. It was not only intended to be informative and enhance visibility of the problem. So Wexler and others are not considering as a movement. Whereas Hari Bhakti and Sa in 27 identifies it with a movement. So the hashtag Me Too as a movement is been identified as Hari Bhakti and Sa. At the same time, other writers like Mendes, King Rose, and others have identified it as a driving feminist digital activism. So they consider the Me Too as a feminist movement, and that also as a part of an activism in the digital world. And what is also very interesting is that others have also analyzed the issues, not the hashtag Me Too, but the issues as making the feminism a popular topic. Now I am basically looking into one of the beautiful visual exploration of Me Too by Valentina de Elfi-Lifo in 2018. And if you are interested, you can go to her website, Me Too Mentum, and you will find it very nice way she visualizes. She is a graphic designer, conceptual artist, and she collects all the tweets and try to visualize it as a part of a big data. So she explores themes, geographical footprints, as well as key moments. And she has used a visual metaphor of a flower called dandelion, which is normally considered as weed, but it is a plant which has the ability to spread and grow anywhere. It is beautiful, complex, and it symbolizes endurance, growth, and the possibility of change. If you look into her visualization, they are all in the shape of this dandelion. So this is one of the where she looks into the root, where you find sexual in the middle. You'll find it large number of other into large number of issues, themes identified with it. And if you look into the representations, you'll find a reshaping of societal change. Me Too hashtag Me Too has played a critical role in developing tools that drive social change. In many places, it did in many countries.
বলে কিন্তু কৈছে তাইতো প্ৰিমেচিয়ৰটো নহয় সেইটো কৈছে তাইৰ যোনমাখা বস্তু মই দেখছো প্ৰিমেচিয়ৰ বিলাকৰ সেনেহে
And the stories are also hidden in the data. The way she presented in her dandelion, there are many stories which are there in the data. Of course, the data is very, as I said, it is in millions. So it requires a huge time to analyze it, to come into a proper analysis of it. But what it makes is that it gives a sense, the implications of these relations between the theme and the geographical footprints, about the issues, about the, as well as about the magnitude. At the same time, what we can also see the hashtag #MeToo as a tool which stimulated or dialogue between the different groups. Now I will go into more into the semiotic aspects of it, looking into the theme. If you look into #MeToo, #MeToo within the quotes and hashtag #MeToo, these are three different signs, as I told you in the beginning. You may say that the same is written in the same way, that only some differences of punctuation and other markers, but as a sign, there are three different signs. They are not the same. And we as a human beings, as I said in the very beginning, we are basically inclined to make the meanings, to make a significance. Therefore, we are also called animal symbolicum or homo significans, because we are significance maker, or we make a meaning. Of course, if you look into this, the picture that I have given of semiotics, the very fundamental idea, I'm following the Saussurean concept rather than the Peirce's concept of sign. Actually, the picture is not correct. Instead of what is in the lower hemisphere of the sphere should have been at the top in the northern side, and what should be in the northern part or in the top part should have been in the downward side. Similarly, the arrow should have been in a reverse direction. Never mind, it doesn't make a difference, but at least we can say that how the way it has been conceived is been different from what has been portrayed over here. Since human beings are the one who creates and manipulates signs in the process of making a semiosis, we take language and we write, we make gestures, we make images. Now with emojis, we do express.
পিছত ফিডব্যাক লিংক এটা দিব কিন্তু
So we do represent in different forms. So writing is one of them. And what writing basically represents is a spoken language. And in spoken language is, in the semiotics, taken as a primary one. And based on it, you can have a writing and you can have different. And since language is one of the science systems, you can include other sciences. If you look at the tree, the picture of the tree, it is one of the science systems. If you look into the spelling of TREE, it's another science system.
Presentation দিব পাৰিম?
Participants, may I please request you to mute your audios, please.
Thank you, Manoja. So we can take written signs is some a sign itself, but it stands for something. So therefore, it is called a signifier. It stands for something else. And the signified is the conceptual or idea or concept that we refer to it. And interaction between them is what is called signification. As I'm sure that everybody in this webinar do follow this. So sign represents organization of the reality through the order and express relations. So we also know that how one sign is related to another sign, and how signs in combinations makes a meaning, or they do express some order as well as meaning. So when we represent, we are also sharing values, ideas, metaphors, beliefs, practices among the group or the community. And at the same time, when you are representing, you are not only representing, but you are also depicting. If you look into these two facts, and if you go back to Spivak's point, these two facts are not independent of it. When if look into the case of a very important piece of text from our Northeast, which has been represented in Hollywood. So Mary Come. So look at this movie called Mary Come. I had a very long discussion with my friend, mentor, and my now colleague also, for a long period of time over representation of Mary Kom as Priyanka Chopra. I was not very happy, and I'm still not very happy. Of course, it depicted Mary Kom's story, but Mary Kom as a person from a Northeast is not being represented by Priyanka Chopra in many features, in many aspects. So representation is fine, but the depiction is not fine. In other words, depiction is fine, represent. So what Spivak also said about that, we cannot think of are in a conjoined way. If you think of representation, it's also of depiction. So when we talk about this semi-twin of representation and depiction, these are also the political, they're also social, they're also economic, artistic, as well as semiotic and linguistic. Now, if you Me Too, 3 Me Too's for me, Me Too dot, Me Too within quotes, and hashtag Me Too. What is their significance? So as I said in the beginning also, tweets and retweets, posts and reposts, likes, mentions, and other things are composed of signs. Hence, they have their own signification. I'm not just talking about the meaning, but they're of signification. And since these are dynamic, communicative, and contextual, they do have denotative meaning as well as connotative meaning, denotative referential meaning as well as connotative meaning. Now, if you look into these 3 boxes that I've tried to portray, these are 3 different signs, and these 3 different signs represent 3 different self of ideas. If you look into it, 3 boxes. If you look at Tarana Burke's Me Too dot, it's basically about young women of color from low wealth communities. It's also about empathy and healing through community, and it has a cathartic function because it's related with empathy and healing, and it's also been labeled as a movement. But if you look into Elisa Milano's, it's about sharing of experiences of sexual misconduct in workplace. So it's confined to workplace as well as to share the experience, first as a reply rather than as a status. And what was the idea was not to have a movement or a cathartic function, but to give a sense of magnitude of the problem. So it's a very defining goal to identify the magnitude of the problem. And it was considered as a problem. And with the hashtag #MeToo, which led to its hashtag #MeToo, it was basically about sexual harassment and sexual assault. It was not about the young women or of color or of low communities or in misconduct in workplace. It was about from home to office to field to everywhere. So it was basically a larger, it gained the momentum, it gained the mass with the harassed of the sexually harassed and sexually assaulted. It was informative, definitely, because it was having a millions and it was a digital initiative rather than like Me Too dot, which was basically within a non-governmental organization kind of a movement. It was an open conversation. As I mentioned earlier also, for the first time, many communities and societies where the sexual assault, harassment, workplace, whether it was in the religious place or whether it was in home or whether it was in any other area, was not discussed as an open matter for one's well-being, started to pour in this social media. One of the advantages of social media is also that it also allowed many people to remain anonymous. So when people become anonymous, in most of the cases, they also became what Aristotle called it as hollow men. So when you become a hollow man, you don't have the morals. So therefore, one of the wrong things that had happened to the Me Too movement was that most of the anonymous just became a part of this trend, as it was trending at that point of time. So it really created a certain negative points towards the whole the hashtag Me Too initiative. Of course, no doubt, it clearly showed the visibility, it clearly showed the solidarity, and it clearly showed that yes, we have come to an age where we need to take a very positive action towards making our lives better, making our future better. And with these points, if I look into the semiotic analysis, if you go back into these three boxes once again, you may think that Me Too is same as written in English, but this Me Too have three different sets of ideas to follow. Therefore, there are three different signs with three different significations. So if you go back to Roland Barthes, 1957, his famous mythologies, what he conceives is that connotative meaning is ideologically governed, of course, and it has been more by media also, and which leads to the creation of myth. As I mentioned in the beginning also, myth need not be understood in a very classical sense of a folklore, as some story about origin or something, or myth need not be understood as something fictitious which we have not witnessed, like Kalki Avatar and others in the Indian mythology, which we don't know, but we consider it as a myth, something as fictitious, or which might be irrealist in that sense. But myth has been defined in a very particular way by Roland Barthes in his essays. So it's basically a popular ideas that which are stripped of their original denotative meanings and which are often political in nature and which are repackaged and imbued with new meaning for different political implications. Here the politics is not about the party base, but also about all sorts of politics. And it has been presented in accessible form for mass consumption. If you look into his essay, The Rhetoric of Image, where he analyzed a very mundane existence of an image which is usually given in an advertisement for Panjani pasta, which was at that point of time in 1957, around 52-57, which was in circulation in Paris. Nowadays you get it in India also, because Panjani also came to India. And I recently, few days back only, I saw a packet of Panjani pasta in my neighborhood shop. I was totally thrilled because that's the only pasta that I have read about. I have never tested it. So I thought of trying it once. But this is how the myth has been circulated, that how these popular ideas are stripped of their meaning. And now the Panjani, and how the Panjani is creating that idea, if you look into it, how the freshness of Italianness, looking into this, I'll also come into it. And if you look into why semiotics, when there is a story of sexual assault, so if you look into the Bukema, which is cited in March 2019, I will just quote this sentence: semiotics offers us the theoretical framework that underpins the claim that we are not born as a woman but turned into a woman. So basically going back to the ideas that was there in a very long period of time. Being a woman is a process of becoming in and through language and through the symbolic system. So language as a symbolic system, you become a woman, or through language as a symbolic system, the woman is being created, and not a question of biologically determined destiny. So if you look into this, Me Too is also a myth. It generally started with something else, but when it came the hashtag Me Too, it became a myth. It was robbed of its popular ideas it was a popular idea, a popular happening of that time, which was stripped of its original meaning, and it became a politically in tone. Therefore, the Roland Barthes calls it, there are two types of myths, strong and weak. But looking into the analysis of the hashtag Me Too movement, the critics have not been able to identify with the status, with the present scenario of the movement, either as a strong or as a weak. I'm not going into those areas because I would like to leave those for further analysis. But Me Too has also again to repackage itself. It has gained new movement and it has got political implications, and it has been presented in accessible form for mass consumption and social media. It is here where social media plays a bigger role. So I have made it hashtag Me Too is a myth. So if you look into a myth in a Barth's sins, so we can find three messages. That's why I took the title of this talk as Me Too movement and three messages. So I'm also citing one of the popular examples that most of us might be aware of, and Ferdinand Ma'am also made reference to it about, and there are many such stories about, and there are many tweets and emails, definitely, and there are many other things, and many personalities are in. But I would like to include Chetan Bhagat's and Ira Trivedi's one. And to be honest, this was the only one which I was following for some period of time, not on the social media website, but outside the. I'm referring to it, to Chetan Bhagat. It's not that I am a great follower of Chetan Bhagat or of Ira Trivedi, but basically I was trying to see that how Indian English writing in itself is also involved with this phenomenon, and how, since they are also human beings, and how the whole field of Anglo-Indian publication is taking place, and how what was the role, all sort of things they're trying to. So if you look into the tweet by Chetan Bhagat, you'll find the two instances. One is what he has tweeted, and another is what he has quoted Ira Trivedi, another writer. And if you look into it, one of them is email, and one of them is part of the email which has been embedded in the tweet. So if you look into the Barth's way of analyzing things, you can find three things which I put it in. One is first linguistic messages, second is coded iconic message, and third is non-coded iconic messages. So what is the linguistic message? Linguistic messages are basically the textual messages. All the things that is written from if you begin from the top, Chetan Bhagat, till tweeting about this, these are all what is written in hashtags, mentions, everything is part of the linguistic message. And if you go through this text, you find something very important, you find it something very important, which is pressing most of the time. If you look into the context of India, if you look into the context of Chetan Bhagat, if you look into the context of Ira Trivedi, and that's the point what I have taken it as an anchor is investment of me and my family. Here the family, the question of family comes into the picture. Here the mental harassment comes into a picture. So this is what has been all. And if you look into the other hashtags, so which was the result or the byproduct of the hashtag #MeToo is the hashtag fake charges, hashtag harassed. So people think, or you can think the male in this particular context think that to write about or to complain about it is being harassed. How would one would feel it if it is really a physical one rather than just a textual one? Of course, both of them are harassment in any way. Another is the coded iconic message. So what is the coded iconic message? Is the copy of the email, which is as a visual medium. If you look into the forms of the physical forms of the tweet and the message, they are different. So I have taken it, the whole copy of the Ira Trivedi's email to Chetan Bhagat as a visual copy, and therefore I'm taking it, I'm considering as a coded iconic message. Here, in this one, so if you go through this conversation, this is a very short email, which is like a reply, not a very formal email, but informal way. If you look into it, and it has been written informally, like you, letter U for YOU, and all sort of things. It's not a very like what Indian English writers are expected, right? Even the punctuations are not appropriate, correct, and many things have been missing or maybe out of order. But that's what the visual item is all about. So if you go through this, it gives an idea that both of them were known to each other. So they were acquaintances. It is not that strangers. And when I was reading it, Ira Trivedi's version of the hashtag #MeToo about Chetan Bhagat, Ira was trying to say that whatever he has described in his novels, I have not read it, so I believe Ira Trivedi's description. that whatever he has described about the love-making initial moves in the with the character is exactly what happened with him. So they met in the lobby of the hotel, and Chetan was supposed to give a book to Ira, and unfortunately, Chetan tells Ira that I've forgotten to get a copy for you. It's in my room. Let's go to the room. So all sort of things. So it shows that. Those pieces of conversation, it shows that Ira and Chetan were not strangers, they were acquainted, they were knowing each other. At the same time, it also shows that they were not only knowing each other as a people belonging to the same field, but also they were in contact with each other. Look at the mails that has been written. It shows a high degree of informality between these two authors. So, and it was also a kind of an online flirting, or whether you want to call it as flirting or what, but I have referred it as online flirting, like writing "we miss you," "kiss you," and all sort of references, all sort of these symbols gives a connotations that there was a kind of a degree of each other's closeness was there. At the same time, when you write "miss you" and "kiss you," it also shows that Ira was also shows Ira in a way that she was also receptive, or she was also a giver, as a what we people normally call it as eager for his keys, or for he was also eagerly wanting to meet Chetan and other things. If you go back into the words, what has been written back. At the same time, they have discussed also slaving, going back to the edicts and all sort of things, and in between, and look at the reference of dude and all sort of things. And if you look into this, there is also a very big high expectation of Ira Trivedi to become a member of ICC. She doesn't want, or she has to go in the old days, and it is only possible with you, and all sort of things. And they have some kind of a reference to some that form, probably that DAP form refers to some kind of a form of ICC membership. But then it's some kinds of, and she's also accepting lost effort, and it's okay, fine. And so there shows a kind of continuance. So if you look into it, did you write? And there is a question. So that shows that Ira expects a reply from Chetan Bhagat. So there is a kind of a continuity between the conversations. So I'm only representing part of it, and there's a lot written in it. Of course, as said, that Ira made it very clearly about it, and she also didn't go beyond it. Chetan also apologized to at certain extent, to certain point. At the same time, Ira said that I don't want to do all the things because we are in the same field. We will be meeting again and again. We will be hitting each other. Something like that. It's what I really don't like. If you look into the non-coded message, and these are all the denotative messages, it has got denotative meaning. If you look into the word like her claim, mental harassment, fake charges, false, who wanted to kiss, all sorts of things. And from 2013, 2010, all sort of things have been reflected in 2015-18. And if you look into it, it was tweeted early in the morning around 9:59, and by that time there was already 1,000 or more people liking it, and more than half of the people were retweeting. People were tweeting about it. If you try to analyze such tweets, which are in millions, you'll find a large bulk amount of issues which Valentina tried to do it. At the same time, I'd also like to point to this slide where Elizabeth Dobrin has tried to figure it out, what are the issues that were involved in it. So she has basically, if you look into her work 2020, she has tried to define it into three, depending upon the response. One was about a utopic one, neutral one, and dystopic one. So if you go into it, the details of the work, I'll give you the reference also, sources also, which are actually very available online without much hard work. You'll find it, these issues were there. So if you look into the utopic one, so it was about the revolution, it was about watershed moment, it was about a tsunami, it was a transformative moment. So it was a kind of a badge of honor, a female power. So this was there. If you look into the very neutral perspective towards it, was an acknowledgement, attempt, confession. So that sort of things were there. If you were looking into this topic, the negative one, it was about a call, reversion to attitudes about women, sex panic, moral panic, petition to be forgiven, witch hunt, McCarthyism. So all sort of things were reflected. If we go into a semiotic analysis of each and every linguistic message, coded as well as non-coded iconic message, you will find large series of. Valentina did one of these, Dobrin did one of these. I think we need to do still in our languages, because languages do play part as a different sign. So I think we also need to figure it out. What were the tweets in our Indian languages? What were the tweets in Hindi languages? Because we can identify Hindi still not with the elite, but with the larger section of population. Of course, they are metropolitan, and since the digital mode is there. So we can have that kind of a study. At the same time, as a part of the Northeast India, it is very important also to see what kind of tweets actually came from these geographic places, whether it was in English, whether it was in Assamese, whether it was in Nepali, or whether it is in some other language written in Roman script or in Devanagari script or in Assamese script. So what were the kind of, and who were the actors, who were the assaulters, who were assaultees? So all sort of things, I think it's very important, significant topic for those who are studying this hashtag #MeToo or #MeToo. So one can easily find it, and I believe that my talk and of course the ma'am's talk will provide a kind of sort of a ingredient as well as to generate impetus for future researchers to work basically from our areas, from our issues. Basically, that's what we basically the location of the scholar becomes much more important. And with these few observations on #MeToo, #MeToo single quote, and #MeToo, I would like to bring to the fact that these are complementary to each others. They complement each other for institutional and cultural change. Since I belong to the discipline of linguistics, and if I look into the Saussurean sense, these are allophones, they are allo movements. #MeToo is a movement, as what Tarana Burke mentioned it, and #MeToo is also a digital movement, as if you look into Hari Bhakti and others. So it's also a digital movement, not precisely as what movement like #MeToo is, #MeToo is. So these two signifiers are movements for empowerment, justice, and for better society. So these, I consider it as complementary allo movements. And of course, this is a screenshot from the #MeToo site, which is of Tarana Burke's. So you are not alone. Join the movement, support survivors, and end sexual violence. And if you are interested, you can go MeTooMVDMT.org. So this is one of the sites that I would like basically refer to people to look into when we go into the #MeToo also. Of course, there is no big difference between two of them. In the recent interview, Tarana Burke mentioned that her movement, which she started in 2006, never got so much of popularity, not much of strength or of visibility. And when Elisa Milano tweeted about it, I'm not the one who did this, started this, but it was started by somebody, Tarana Burke, long time back. That's how I got to be recognized. That's what Tarana Burke said in one of her recent interviews. So in a sense, Tarana contributed to Elisa, and Elisa contributed to Tarana. Therefore, I consider both of these are allo movements of what the change that we also like to see in a future society, not only in the present, but also in the future society. With these few words and my attempt to have a continental semiotic analysis of of these three phenomena, different sets of signifiers, and their significations, signified and significations, I would like to refer back to some of the references that I have used in conceiving the idea that I have tried to make you assure that this is one of the ways to analyze the whole phenomenon apart from the traditional core analysis of from a feminist perspective, social science, or any other perspective. With these few words, I would like to thank you for your kind ears and patience. I hope it will definitely, I'm sure that there will be definitely some term papers, some theses coming up in future, and I also expect that let there be something from our own Northeast also. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. That was indeed a very enlightening talk. So in this very interesting interaction, both our esteemed speakers have dealt with the history, the progression, and have delved into the various nuances of the hashtag #MeToo movement. And we are sure from today's interaction, there will be a lot of research that would be coming up in the future. So we now would like to have some interactions from the participants. To start with, may I request both our speakers, if you have some comments to make on, each other's presentation, please proceed. Then we'll move on to the other participants.
Monaza, I don't have anything. Actually, ma'am's presentation helped me a lot because she made a good background for me, and she has presented very well, adequately, and bringing a lot of information. So I hope she has helped me. So I don't have any comment on her.
Okay. But I like the way you made sense of the semiotics, and I mean, I think that you had a lot of data, and the tweets that you showed really helped, and then the Chetan Bhagat link was pretty interesting. I really like that. Thank you for that.
Audible? Hello? Audible? Yes?
Yeah,
Okay,
you are audible.
yeah, okay. So one of the participants wanted to know if to both, I mean, the question is for both the presenters, of course. Do you think that the Me Too movement is going to bring about any change in the society?
Yes, may I respond to this? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. But it is also an empirical one. If it would bring changes in the society depends on various aspects and and we need to observe that over a period of time to exactly know whether it is really going to change. But what it has done, in fact, is to open up space, at least online, to share. I mean, at least we are kind of we are aware of it, we know it, and certain things are changing. In case of India, we have certain laws which are more active. People are speaking about it, and this I believe speaking itself, to speak itself has started, and then it will bring in certain changes. But the question, I cannot like say or give you a percentage like, okay, this society is going to evolve out of this, but then that, because that depends on empirical research over time. Thank you. Samar, if you want to go ahead with your reply, I have finished.
Yeah, thank you, Monalisa. I think the question itself is the answer. That when you start asking, does it make a change? I'm sure that it does make a change. As ma'am said, that we don't know because these are empirical things and taking place, and it is yet to evolve in very different ways. As we saw it in my presentation, that Me Too dot and Me Too with single quote and hashtag Me Too has evolved across in a different forms in the over last 14 years. So I'm sure that the core idea of women's empowerment, equality, justice, everything will remain. But the shape, how it takes place, whether it takes place in either as a hashtag Me Too or as a Me Too dot or some other movement, I'm sure that the the idea behind it will always be carried forward. I'm sure that the younger generations and the coming generations will definitely take the concept or the idea of empowerment much beyond. But we don't know whether the hashtag Me Too will continue long time or not, or there might be a new hashtag Me Too, maybe 2021 or 2020. So that's a significant difference that I see. That it's not just a hashtag Me Too, but the idea of empowerment will definitely, or justice, or gender equality will definitely move forward.
Okay. So we have another query from Sudarshana Kakoti. She wants to know, how far do you think this movement has helped common women like us, women who still hesitate or are not allowed to voice their harassment stories, women who still don't have access to such digital platforms in our society?
Yeah, that is a very,
Fadina
very,
ma'am, yeah.
yeah, that is a very, very interesting question. And I think I thought this should, I mean, in fact, I was asking myself this question because you see, particularly in India, in the Indian context, we cannot rule out the role of caste and class. And I have already mentioned in my talk that it is more complex in India, and hashtag Me Too has in fact remained an urban phenomenon and open to women who are tech savvy or who in fact can access the net. But if we talk about the rural women, um, I believe it will take a long time, but uh, positively enough, we see that we say that at least there is a community now who recognize the problem, and others who are more aware of it now, and we see that this will have to go on. We have to include or researchers or women studies department should, I think, be more active in this case to really uh, go to these areas so that these women do not, I mean, are not left out. We hear their voices as well. But in India, as I said, it is very complex because of caste and class, and we cannot rule out their roles of these digital markers.
We'd like to hear your take on this.
Mona, to be honest, I don't think so. I should be replying, and I will not be replying, because if I say that, then I'm also doing some kind of distress to the whole thing. As a male, heterosexual, urban, and all sort of things, I don't think so. I do have a moral academic right to speak on the issue, and what ma'am said, I 100% support it, and I really believe in that. But I did not come out from my own mouth. So it will be like something of a heart specialist talking about corona in our national television. So I refrain myself from speaking on it. So I leave it to my other comrades to take the issue, because every time if I start giving response to the women's, then the gyno criticism might fail at the very well point at its very beginning. So I refrain from giving these comments. I think it should be. I think you have made it well balanced. So I think ma'am has given it. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so I think the next question then should be to you, Dr. Sinha. Professor Mohammad Jahiruddin Arif, he wants to know, is this movement for both women or men and men?
I'm definitely sure that if you think the movement just for women, if, as I showed it in the beginning also, like Me Too dot or like hashtag Me Too, it's just or Me Too single quote. It is just about the women's experiences of sexual assault or of sexual violence. But if you look at the hashtag Me Too, then it is not about just women. It is about the sexual violence. Whether an Indian male might be very proud to say that I was never a victim, but of course there are people like there are other people who have come forward to say that of course they were also sexual victims, and there might be a lot of cultural problem to accept that I am a victim of sexual assault, maybe by another male or by another female. That might be true about our Indian within the culture, society, and everything. But definitely, it is not about just women. It is about empowerment. It is about a better society, a better future. So it is not just about men and women. It is also about transgender, bi, lesbian, gays, everyone. Wherever there is sexual violence, wherever there is a sexual assault, wherever there is imbalance, maybe in power, maybe in other things. So I really don't see it as just as a simple point of male versus female.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Now, Dr. Hussein, would you like to say something on this?
I think he had answered, I mean, he has in fact responded pretty well. I don't want to add anything more, because he did refer to LGBTQ as well, because we know about their experiences, and if one is interested, one can also visit the hashtag #MeTooIndia page, where there are certain posts, I don't remember quite well how many of the posts would talk about LGBTQ, but I remember some of them were sharing their experiences, and also someone who talked about the experiences of prisoners and their sexual harassments. So if one is interested in this area, one can really visit the India page to know more on these cases.
Okay, so now we'll take one last query by Dr. M.K. Jain, who wants to know which should be given priority, enforcement or awareness for better results.
Mona Lisa, can you repeat
Dr.
it
Sinha?
once again?
Okay, Dr. M.K. Jain, he wants to know which should be given priority, enforcement or awareness for better results.
To be honest,
am I audible?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't see enforcement and awareness as Kon Badaka Karorpati, you take one of them and you'll get the prize. I think both of them are very important because unless and until enforcement is not there, awareness is not there, so we may not move to a better society. A better society needs both the things, and I think not just these two things, more than this also. So I really don't see as a choice between this. Both of the things should be there, plus other relevant things also should be there.
Yes, I do think that these both the things are related. They are linked. Unless you have awareness, you cannot enforce something. Without enforcement, there cannot be awareness. So I think both the issues are linked.
Okay, so thank you so much for your comments. And may I request our HOD, Dipali Rajkumar ma'am, to please make her comments.
Well, just a minute. All this time we have been listening to your scintillating, very enlightening speech. I'm really happy that somehow I got the chance to listen to you. I'm really enthralled by your way of presentation, your idea about the whole thing. We are visualizing a society where everyone is living in a happy and comfortable mood, and also as persons linked with academics, we want more research works to go on, as had been pointed out by Dr. Sinha sir. More positive aspects should come out from such research works in future, and which in turn lead to a better living in the society. Thank you. Thank you once again.
May I
you,
now
ma'am.
request Principal Sir to make his comments? Sir, Principal Sir, are you here with us?
Yes. Audible? Is it
Yes,
audible?
yes, sir. You are.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
You are audible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, both of resource person, Professor Ardina and Dr. Sinha, for their nice presentations. Really, I enjoy the both of technical sessions. Though I have read has tech me too in the papers, but today I have learned many more things, that this chapter had opened diversified area, research area for further study. We all peoples, though we are telling about gender sensitization, but really we are far away from this. That is the reality that we have faced. So thanks, and I also offer my heartiest thanks to organizer, because they have choosing a very tough topic, the exceptional topics. Uh, they have choose. So that is a no doubt. This will certainly open a new aspect in the further study. Thanks to both of our resource person. We hope that we will, in the coming days, we will also keep our touch with our resource person for these types of academic activities. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we have now. We are now approaching to the end of our webinar. The objective of the hashtag #MeToo movement was basically, as pointed out by our esteemed speakers, the outpouring of personal perspective stories shared ranged from tragedy and accusation to solidarity and call for action. The social media platform can bring out the underrepresented voices, which can help bring about institutional and cultural changes, as pointed out by Dr. Sinha. But group adversity doesn't necessarily build group virtue. It's hardly the case that membership in a historically marginalized community builds special strength and virtue in every member of that community. And in a country as large and diverse as ours, not every member of a historically marginalized community has faced meaningful adversity. And not every member of a historically powerful community has enjoyed privilege. So the problem is not men or women or gender. It is individuals. The political answer, therefore, is not any gender. It is individuals who seek justice. Any other approach risks sacrificing real cultural progress for the sake of short-term political gains. Society's opinions are capable of change, and this change begins on a micro level and has the potential to influence many minds. If social media becomes a more equitable space for people from different communities, it can reflect in the transformation of offline spaces as well. So with this note, we would like to end today's webinar on #MeToo, the politics of gender and its representation in social media. The feedback link has been shared in the chat box. All of you who fill this feedback form and submit will be given e-certificates. I request everyone to please fill it up and submit it. Thank you for your participation, and we hope to meet again in the future with another very interesting discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mona Lisa. Thank you, Fatima ma'am, for sharing this platform together. I hope we'll meet someday.
Yeah, sure, we'll meet. Thank you, Mona Lisa. It was nice.
Oh, excuse me, Dr. Hussein. Dr. Hussein and Dr. Sinha. A few of the participants, they wanted your PPTs. So can you please? And I think many of them have left their email IDs. So if you are,
I think Summer's PPT is, if I can speak, Summer's PPT is more organized. I believe it has it has so many information. But I can, yes, I can give you the links. I can share the links that I showed.
Mona Lisa, can I share it with you? I'll share the PDF.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then I'll share it with you.
Okay. Okay, then I can forward to everyone. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
again
much.
to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.